Emily Dawson wasn't supposed to be noticed. At least, that's how she felt every day, working as a civilian intern on the Navy SEAL training base outside Coronado, California. Her job was straightforward, mundane even. She carried clipboards, fetched water, entered data, and most often walked down dusty shooting lanes to replace shredded paper targets after hours of grueling SEAL firearms practice. To most of the soldiers, she was just the girl behind the line. No rank, no uniform, no stripes. Just a quiet 22-year-old with a ponytail and too many degrees for the job she was doing. A double major in physics and systems engineering from a respected university, but without military credentials. She was invisible in a world dominated by hierarchy and action. Still, Emily didn't mind. Being there, even in the background, was enough. Watching elite warriors train with clinical focus and physical precision fascinated her. Every crack of gunfire on the range was like thunder she had come to respect. She never interrupted. She never inserted herself. She just observed, quietly absorbing every movement, every command, every decision made under pressure. That morning had been like all the others. The desert sun was brutal, and the California wind whipped dust across the range. Emily waited until the clear range command echoed across the field. Once the final shot had been fired, she grabbed a new set of targets and jogged down the line, weaving between battered wooden posts and shell casings. She had no idea that someone was watching her more closely than usual. From the edge of the range, Lieutenant Mason Cole adjusted his ballistic glasses and narrowed his eyes. He'd noticed her before, not for her presence, but for her silence. There was something in the way she moved, focused, aware, but unbothered by the elite chaos around her. She didn't flinch during gunfire. She didn't sneak glances at the SEALs like some civilians did. She just did her job with a quiet confidence. He respected. He'd also seen her watching. Not with awe, but with calculation. She studied angles. She followed drills as if mentally solving each movement like an equation. That wasn't normal. Most interns came and went, interested in the title, not the task. But this one, she was different. Emily finished stapling the last target, brushed dust from her pants, and turned to walk back when she saw him. Mason, at 6'2", clean-shaved with sun-darkened skin and a presence that made others instinctively move out of his path. Decorated in multiple combat zones, Mason was a respected team leader, brutally efficient, notoriously quiet, and not known for small talk. He stepped into her lane. Her first instinct was to freeze. Was something wrong? Had she messed something up? But Mason didn't look angry. He didn't speak. He just looked at her for a beat, then unslung his rifle from his shoulder. An M4, modified, battle-worn, gleaming in the sun. He held it out to her. Emily blinked. Sorry? Take it, Mason said simply, his voice low and even. Emily's hands hovered uncertainly. Why? Shoot, he replied, stepping aside, clearing her line of sight to the target she'd just stapled. The world slowed. Every muscle in her body tensed. This had to be a joke. Was he mocking her? Was this some kind of team prank? She glanced around. The other SEALs were watching now. No one left. No one moved. The entire range had gone silent, a kind of silence that hung heavy with weight. She looked at the rifle again. Her breath caught. She hadn't held one in years. Not since her father's passing. Her father, a Marine sniper, decorated and stern, but loving in his own quiet way. He'd taught her how to hold a weapon before she ever held a cell phone. She remembered the ranch, the targets set up near the fence, the long afternoons learning how to breathe slowly, squeeze not jerk, the trigger, safety first, respect always. Emily took the rifle gently. It felt familiar and foreign at the same time, like holding a piece of her past with new weight. She stepped forward, feet shoulder-width apart, mimicking the stance she hadn't used since she was 16. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She inhaled slowly, exhaled slower. Sight picture, focus. Squeeze, crack. The bullet punched clean through the bullseye. A few murmurs broke the silence. One SEAL gave a soft whistle. Emily lowered the rifle and turned to Mason. Wide-eyed, he didn't smile. But there was something in his eyes: recognition, approval, challenge, maybe. He reached out and took the rifle back with one hand. Nice shot, he said. She nodded, unsure what to say. Where'd you learn? He asked. My dad, she replied quietly. Mason gave a single nod, then walked away without another word. Emily stood frozen. Her hands still tingled from the recoil. She wasn't sure if it had been a test, a gesture, or just a random moment, but it had cracked something open inside her. A door she thought had long since closed, and more importantly, someone on that range had finally seen her. Not as just the girl behind the line, but as someone who might just belong there too. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bunk at the temporary intern quarters, staring at the ceiling as the scene on the range replayed in her mind like a film on loop. The heat of the rifle in her hands, the silence of the SEALs, the sharp kick of the bullet breaking the air, and Mason, his unreadable expression, the way he'd said nothing and everything all at once. Nice shot, he had said. She turned over, pulling the thin blanket tighter. She could still feel the weight of that rifle, like it had branded something into her palms. Not just steel and ammunition, but validation. A strange kind of recognition. Why had he done that? Morning came quickly. She slipped on her standard cargo pants and range boots and walked the long gravel trail toward the shooting lanes. She wasn't scheduled for target replacement today, but she hoped. She didn't know what she hoped for. Maybe just another chance. Another word. Another moment. She found them already training. SEALs moved in tight formation, shouting to each other over the staccato rhythm of gunfire. Mason was among them, focused, fast, commanding. She stayed at the edge of the range, hands in her pockets, trying to blend in. After a few minutes, the gunfire stopped. Mason looked toward the line and spotted her. Their eyes met. He didn't wave, didn't nod. He just walked straight toward her, rifle slung over his back. You want another go? He asked. Emily blinked. Really? He nodded. Let's see. If yesterday was a fluke. She hesitated only a second before following him to the shooting position. The rest of the team casually watched from behind their glasses. One leaned over and whispered, She's back. Mason handed her the same M4, but this time he said nothing. No instructions. No tips. Just trust. Emily settled in. She planted. Her feet brought the stock to her shoulder and breathed deep. The first shot cracked, punching the target near the center. She shifted slightly, recalibrating. Two more shots followed, closer, cleaner. One cut the bullseye. This time there were no gasps, just low murmurs. She's good, one SEAL said quietly. Too clean to be luck, said another. Emily lowered the rifle, cheeks flushed but calm. Mason took the rifle, gave it a once-over, then looked back at her. Where'd you train? My dad was a Marine sniper, she said. He taught me everything. We used to shoot soda cans from 300 yards. Mason nodded, thoughtful. Explains a lot. He motioned for her to follow him. Come watch the rest of the drill. Emily paused. I thought civilians weren't allowed that close. I'll allow it. His tone was even, but there was a slight smirk this time. You've earned it. And just like that, she was. Walking beside Navy SEALs, no longer invisible. They resumed training, storming mock houses, clearing rooms, and exchanging signals without words. Mason occasionally turned and explained tactics to Emily between drills, quick, efficient summaries she understood almost instantly. She'd studied operations theory in college, but this was the real thing. You process fast, he said between reloads. You don't flinch. Most people do. Emily shrugged. I like systems, patterns. Chaos has logic if you know where to look. That earned a glance. You ever think about joining? She laughed. The Navy didn't want me. I applied. To the academy. Rejected. My file said I wasn't exceptional enough. Mason stared at her. They didn't look hard enough. As the day ended, the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the range in gold. The SEALs began packing up. Emily started to excuse herself, but Mason stopped her. Hang back a minute. They stood together as the others walked away. The breeze rustled dust along the path. You didn't ask why I gave you the rifle yesterday. Mason said. Emily tilted her head. I figured it wasn't my place. He shook his head. You didn't freeze. Most people would have laughed. Or panicked. You didn't even blink. She shrugged. I guess I've been invisible long enough to learn how to watch everything. That's what caught my eye, Mason said. You watch like a sniper. You study before you act. You didn't? Just hit the target yesterday. You earned a place most people never get. Emily swallowed hard. I'm not military. Doesn't matter. Excellence shows itself. He paused. We don't hand out respect easily, but I'm offering mine. She nodded, grateful but still unsure what to say. Come back tomorrow, he said. Same time. For another test? For another. Step forward, Mason replied. Let's see how far you can go. That night, Emily returned to her room and opened an old wooden box from under her bed. Inside was a faded photo of her father in uniform and a folded shooting scorecard from when she was 12. 100 out of 100. She traced the edge of the card, eyes burning with unshed tears. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe, just maybe she was closer to fulfilling a dream she'd buried long ago. She wasn't just replacing targets anymore. She was becoming one. The following morning, Emily woke up before sunrise. She was already dressed and laced up by the time the rest of the interns were still turning in their bunks. Something had shifted in her since Mason's words the previous evening, something she didn't want to lose. When she arrived at the range, it was still mostly quiet. A few SEALs were stretching, checking equipment. Mason stood near a weapons crate, adjusting his sling. He saw her approaching and gave a single nod. You're early, he said. You said same time. I figured early was better. He half smiled. Just barely. Good instinct. The day's drill was different, more complex. Leave fire simulations, tactical team movements, and equipment checks every 10 minutes. Emily expected to stand aside, observe quietly like before. But this time, Mason waved her over mid-briefing and handed her a tablet. Monitor drone telemetry, he said. Emily blinked. You want me to fix it if it stutters? If you can't, call it out. Either way, we're trusting you. She took the device, pulse rising. This wasn't just casual observation anymore. This was responsibility. As the team launched into movement drills, Emily tracked the miniature quadcopters above them, used to relay aerial positioning to SEAL visors. For 10 minutes, it was smooth. Then a signal dropped. One drone glitched. Emily's. Fingers flew across the screen, isolating the problem. Bad packet error. She ran a software patch, rebooted the stream, and got the drone reconnected in 42 seconds. By the time the team came back, Mason asked, You catch the fault? Yeah, she replied. Firmware hiccup. Fixed it. He grinned. Faster than our last tech officer. From behind them, another SEAL gave a low chuckle. "She's not bad, LT." Emily felt her cheeks warm, but she kept her focus on the screen. During a break, Mason handed her a water bottle and leaned against a storage container beside her. "You don't seem surprised you're doing well." Emily shrugged. "I've always known I was good at this stuff. Just never had a place to prove it. You do now." She looked up. "Why are you doing this?" Mason's eyes narrowed slightly. "Considering. Everyone here was given a chance. Someone opened a door for me once too. Doesn't matter if you're in uniform. If you've got grit, you deserve to be tested." They sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just real. Then came the moment that would solidify everything. Later that afternoon, the team prepared for a simulated hostage rescue drill. Emily stood back, watching as they readied equipment. Suddenly, a call came in over the comms. The visual targeting software locked up again. The tech assigned to fix it was off-site. Mason looked at her. "You're up." Emily sprinted to the console. The system was glitching badly, misreading target IDs. She rewrote the route map on the fly, adjusted 4 calibration points, and created a manual overlay that could be used through there. Heads-up visors. The fix took under 4 minutes. When the drill resumed, it ran flawlessly. After the exercise, one of the SEALs, a guy named Reyes, approached her with a look that was surprisingly respectful. "What are you, some kind of genius?" Emily shrugged. "Just practiced." Mason clapped her on the shoulder. "That's not luck. That's earned." The rest of the day passed like a dream. Emily wasn't just accepted, she was engaged. SEALs asked her questions, joked with her, passed her equipment to examine. She even got a crash course in weapon assembly from Reyes, who walked her through an entire field strip of an M4 with the same tone he probably used teaching new recruits. By evening, she was exhausted, but energized in a way she'd never felt. As she walked back to the intern quarters, Mason caught up beside her. "You keep this up," he said, "and I'm putting your name in for the Civilian Advanced Training Observation Program." Emily stopped walking. "That exists?" He nodded. "Selective." "Very. But I've seen people with less skill and more ego get accepted." "I thought civilians couldn't do things like this," she said. Mason looked at her firmly. "Rules evolve, especially when people like you make them worth breaking." That night, Emily opened her laptop and wrote an email to her mother. She hadn't spoken much about what she was doing, mostly because she didn't think there was anything exciting to say. But now there was. She told her about the SEALs, about Mason, about shooting the rifle, about how, for the first time since her father died, she felt seen, not just for being smart or hardworking, but for being strong. "I don't know where this leads," she wrote, "but I think Dad would have been proud today." She didn't. Hit send right away. She stared at the words, then smiled faintly and added one last line. "Actually, no, I know he would have been." Then she clicked send. Emily thought she was prepared for anything until Mason challenged her to something she hadn't expected. The resilience gauntlet. It wasn't official Navy SEAL training, but it was close. A brutal, scaled-down version designed for visiting officers, partners, and rare civilians who earned the right to try. No weapons, no simulations, just pain, endurance, and the mental strength to push past limits. Mason called it voluntary suffering with purpose. Emily agreed before fully understanding what she was stepping into. She didn't hesitate. She didn't want to give anyone time to talk her out of it, especially herself. The morning of the test, she showed up before sunrise. Reyes greeted her with a grin. "Didn't think we'd see you here." "I didn't think you could handle the embarrassment," she replied with a smirk. That earned a loud laugh from the group. Mason appeared, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning. The list? Only 5 names. 4 men, 1 woman. Emily. He didn't offer encouragement. Just as simple. Don't stop, no matter what. The challenge began with a 1-mile run, easy enough. Then it was 20 minutes of tire flips through thick sand, followed by lung-burning burpees and rope climbs. It escalated fast. Cold water immersion came next. A chest-deep pit filled with ice and steel pipes. The others groaned. One tapped. Out. Emily gritted her teeth and stepped in. The cold hit like knives. Her body went rigid. Her breath disappeared. But she stayed in. 10 seconds. 20, 40-5. Mason crouched by the pit, stopwatch in hand, nodding slowly. 1 minute, he said. She climbed out, lips blue, arms shaking. But she didn't collapse. She looked right at him and said, "Next." And they kept coming. Weighted carries, log lifts, plank holds, crawling under wire in the blistering sun. Her clothes soaked, knees scraped, muscles burning. The 3rd guy quit after falling face first in the mud. The 4th walked off muttering curses. Shaking his head. 2 remained. A wiry guy from Georgia, and Emily. By hour 3, the 2 of them dragged heavy sleds across gravel. The Georgia guy was fading. Emily pushed silently. Every step was pain. Every pull felt like lifting a truck. She thought of her dad marine boots in the snow, lifting her onto his shoulders after hours of training drills. "Don't stop till you finish," he used to say. The pain is real, but so is pride. Emily stumbled once, caught herself. "Still with me?" Mason called from across the lot. She didn't answer, just nodded and kept going. In the final stage, a sandbag run through a half-mile obstacle course. Emily tripped. The bag rolled down a slope. She stared at it, blinking sweat and grit from her eyes. Her body screamed to stop. Her lungs begged for air. She thought of quitting, just for a second. But then she saw the circle of SEALs watching from the hill. No one laughed. No one mocked. They were watching, silent and still, waiting to see what she'd do. So she got up. She limped down the hill, picked up the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and started running again. Slow, uneven, but forward. She crossed the finish line to stunned silence. Then, scattered claps. Then, applause. The Georgia guy hadn't finished. He'd collapsed behind the barrier, medics checking his vitals. Emily stood in the middle of the course, mud-caked and trembling, barely able to stay upright. Mason walked up and didn't say a word. He just reached out a hand. She took it. He pulled her into a standing position and leaned in. "You just did something most don't even attempt," he said. "You didn't break. You didn't wait for permission. That's what we respect." He handed her a towel and a water bottle. Emily wanted to cry, but didn't. She sat down on a concrete block and watched the horizon. The California sky, blurring into orange. Reyes dropped down beside her. "You're insane, you know that?" She smiled through dry lips. "I'll take it." "LT says you might get invited to advanced strategy sessions," he added. "Not a rumor." Emily blinked. "Seriously?" Reyes grinned. "We don't waste talent. You've proved you're not just smart. You've got fire." Mason returned a few minutes later with something in his hand. A patch navy blue with an eagle stitched in gold. Not official, but real. He handed it to her. "We don't give these to civilians." Emily turned it over in her palm. "Why?" "Me? Because you're not just passing tests," he said. "You're rewriting the standard." That night, back in her room, she peeled off the mud-caked uniform and showered for nearly an hour. Her body ached like it had been torn apart and rebuilt. She lay in bed, exhausted but buzzing with quiet victory. On her nightstand, the patch sat beneath a photo of her dad. She smiled, eyes fluttering shut. Pain, pride, and purpose had finally met. Pain faded over the next few days, but the memory of that gauntlet stayed sharp in Emily's mind. Her body ached less with each sunrise. Her steps steadied. But it wasn't just her muscles that had changed. It was her place on the base. She wasn't just the intern anymore. The jokes shifted. So did the glances. She was now in the circle, not circling around it. She'd expected the approval to feel like a finish line. But it didn't. It felt like a doorway. One morning, Mason found her sitting near the edge of the range, legs crossed, staring at a map on her tablet. Studying something? He asked. Emily nodded without looking up. Last week's drill paths. I think there's a blind spot in your entry rotation. That caught his attention. He stepped closer. Show me. She tapped on the screen, zooming into a grid of the training compound. You rotate from the north, sweep left, but the southeast corner has a 6-second coverage gap. A decoy could slip past unnoticed. Mason looked at the screen, then at her. You're right. Later that afternoon, he brought it up in briefing. Civilian Dawson found a tactical flaw in our last drill. We'll be patching that today. Number 1 objected. Reyes even gave her a slow clap. Emily didn't smile. She just made a note on her pad. By week's end, she was helping Mason organize more drills. Not officially, but enough that her ideas were reshaping scenarios. She wasn't imposing, just offering quiet insights. And those insights kept proving correct. Her ability to see patterns, predict errors, and analyze terrain with cold precision didn't go unnoticed. One afternoon, a visiting officer from a partner unit joined a range simulation. During the planning phase, he dismissed Emily's concern about line-of-sight interference. She's just the intern, right? He said lightly. Let's keep it to the team. Mason's voice cut in. She's not just anything. If she says there's a problem, there's a problem. The drill began and failed spectacularly. The officer's team was killed within seconds of breaching, just as Emily had predicted. Later, as he removed his helmet, covered in dust and embarrassment, he approached her sheepishly. Okay, I'm listening next time. Emily just nodded. Good, because mistakes like that in real missions don't come with second chances. After that, she was invited to every strategy session. One night, Mason asked her to join him for coffee at the base rec room. You don't need to be here anymore, he said between sips. Emily raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I mean, you've already proven yourself. You could walk away from this internship with more respect than most civilians ever earn. But you're not telling me to stop. No, he said. I'm asking what you want now. She stared into her cup. I don't know. This was just supposed to be a sidestep. I thought maybe I'd go into systems design or field logistics. But now you've seen what you're capable of, Mason said. She nodded slowly. It feels like I've been preparing for this without even realizing it. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder. Inside was a DOD application form advanced civilian integration program, one of the rarest opportunities for non-military personnel. I already spoke to the commander, Mason said. If you want this, it's yours. I'll sponsor it. Emily's hands shook slightly as she held the folder. I don't have a combat background. You don't need one, he said. You have intelligence, endurance, and something you can't train. Focus. That's why they'll want you. She took the folder home, didn't open it that night. Instead, she stood at the window of her room, staring out at the quiet base, the moonlight stretching across the tarmac. She thought of her dad, her failure to get into the Naval Academy, her years of being overlooked. And now here she was advising SEALs, rewriting drills, fixing software mid-op, holding her own in a gauntlet most wouldn't attempt. It wasn't an accident. It was earned. The next morning, she handed the folder back to Mason, with her signature on the final page. "In," she said. He smiled. "I knew you would be." Later that day, as a transport helicopter lifted off for another training mission, Emily stood on the helipad with Reyes beside her. "You ever wonder what you're doing here?" he asked. "Every day," she replied. "And the answer?" She turned to look at the rising aircraft, wind whipping her hair back. "I'm where I was always meant to be. I just didn't know how to get here until someone moved aside and let me try." Emily's acceptance into the Advanced Civilian Integration Program sent quiet ripples through the base. It wasn't a headline announcement, but people noticed. Doors opened. Conversations paused when she entered rooms now. The paperwork moved. Fast. Within days, she was enrolled in a 6-week rotational course-joint strategic defense training designed to test civilian minds in military scenarios. Only 20 candidates were accepted nationwide, and Emily was the only intern. The rest were specialists, analysts, engineers, even a NASA liaison. Mason briefed her personally the night before she left. "This won't be like anything you've done so far," he warned. "They're going to test your mind, your instincts, your loyalty. It's less about following orders and more about proving you can think 3 steps ahead." "I'm ready," Emily said, her voice steady. Mason gave her a long look. "You always say that. One day I'll see you flinch." "Not today," she said with a smile. The next morning, a black van picked her up at dawn. No goodbye ceremony. No farewell party. Just a quiet nod from Reyes at the gates and the ever-present echo of boots behind her as she stepped into the next phase. The new facility was colder, more clinical. The instructors didn't speak unless necessary. They didn't treat her with condescension, but they didn't go easy on her either. Day one was a data interpretation test, 6 hours of battlefield simulation inputs with flawed variables. Candidates had to spot errors in real time and adjust. Command strategies. Emily finished in 4 hours and caught 3 errors no one else did. On day 3, they ran psychological stress tests. Deprivation, disorientation, relentless interrogation. One candidate quit by lunchtime, citing irreconcilable pressure. Emily kept her eyes focused, breathing even. "I don't get it," one of the other civilians whispered to her afterward. "You don't even come from a tactical background. How do you stay so calm?" Emily shrugged. "I've been underestimated my whole life. You learn to live with pressure when you're constantly trying to prove you belong." But it wasn't. All smooth. On day 7, Emily cracked not from the stress, not from the training, from a memory. One of the drills involved a hostage rescue decision tree. The faces of the simulated hostages were randomized, computer-generated. But one of them looked eerily like her father. Same jawline, same stern gaze, same uniform. She froze. Her hands shook. The other candidates kept working. An instructor watched silently from behind the glass. Emily clenched her fists and forced her focus back. "He wouldn't want me hesitating," she whispered. She completed the scenario with only 1 error. Later that night, alone in her dorm, she stared at a photo she kept in her bag. Her dad in his dress blues. "I still hear your voice, you know," she whispered, telling me to keep going. Week 2 brought team exercises. Mixed group civilians and military officers. Emily was assigned as group lead. A few officers scoffed. Why her? "She's got the best record," the instructor said flatly. No one argued after that. Under her guidance, their team aced 3 out of 4 missions. She wasn't loud. She didn't bark orders. She just listened, calculated, and gave everyone a role they could thrive in. In the mess hall, a quiet respect grew. Officers started asking her what she thought of proposed missions. Others asked how she trained her mind for complex calculations under pressure. Emily never bragged. She always credited Mason, her dad, or just paying attention. During week 4, they simulated a live fire ambush response. Unpredictable weather and incomplete data inputs made it a nightmare. Emily's strategy involved a double flank maneuver with an AI decoy trigger risky. Never tested. The instructors approved. The result. Mission complete in record time. No simulated casualties. You think like a field commander? One major told her afterward. Emily blinked. I'm not even enlisted. That might be the only thing holding you back, he said. At the end of the program, the candidates received classified feedback scores and debriefings. Emily's was simple. Candidate, exceptional. Capable of high-level coordination under stress. Natural leadership instincts. Recommend continued access to Tier 2 strategic training programs. She stood outside the debriefing room afterward, staring out at the horizon. The sun was setting again, just like the first day she'd picked up Mason's rifle. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mason. Knew you'd crush it. When you're back, you're not coming as an intern. You'll be sitting beside me at briefings. She smiled. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just proving she could belong. She was proving that others had a lot to learn from her. Emily returned to the base to little fanfare, but those who mattered noticed. Reyes met her at the gate, grinning as if he'd known the outcome before she left. Told you, he said, clapping her on the back. You're not made for sidelines. Inside the command center, Mason was reviewing satellite imagery. When he saw her walk in, he stood just for a second, then motioned her over. You did well, he said, thanks to what you taught me. He shook his head. What you earned. On the desk beside him was something she hadn't seen since that very first day. The same SEAL-issue rifle he'd handed her on the range. She froze. I figured, Mason said. You might want to hold it again. Properly this time. Emily stepped forward, eyes fixed on the weapon that had changed everything. This isn't regulation, she said softly. No, Mason replied. This is symbolic. She took it. He watched her check it, grip it, aim it with smooth control. Gone. Was the trembling intern? In her place stood someone who understood its weight and earned it. I never asked you, Mason said. Why'd you take it that day? I didn't think. I just reacted. Good, that's instinct. And in this world, instinct matters. They didn't say more, but something unspoken passed between them and understanding. He hadn't given her a gun that day. He'd given her a chance, and she'd never wasted it. That week, she was given a new role, strategic civilian liaison, a position created just for her. She now sat in briefings, reviewed operations, and contributed to tactical decisions, especially those involving civilian coordination. Some old-school officers bristled at the idea. Civilians don't belong in combat planning. One colonel remarked, until Emily broke down one of his blueprints, showed a logistical failure that could have cost lives, and redrew it in 10 minutes. After that, he nodded. Just once. But it was enough. Weeks passed. Then came an unexpected request. Mason called her into his office, unusually tense. There's a mission, he said. Off the books. Classified. Can't tell you where. But they need a mind like yours. Emily leaned in. What's the catch? You won't just be planning. You'll be going in. Unarmed. Embedded in the team. Her breath caught. Why me? Because they need someone who can think under fire, interpret fast data, and pivot mid-op. I told them I had the perfect candidate. You trust me that much? No, Mason said. I trust you more than that. The prep took 3 days. She wasn't given full details, just outlines. The mission involved intercepting stolen tech, embedded inside a hostile-controlled warehouse. It required Someone who could hack into secured systems in real time, without tripping alarms. She trained with a SEAL team that didn't know her. Not Reyes, not Mason. Outsiders. At first, they were skeptical. Another intern, they thought. But that changed fast. She kept up in movement drills, outpaced some in field data recovery. And during a simulated breach, she caught a flaw in their exit plan that would have cornered the team in real combat. Respect came quickly. The night before the mission, Emily sat alone, polishing her boots. One of the SEALs, a gruff sergeant named Knox, joined her. "You really this calm, or just good at faking it?" She smirked. "I've had practice." He looked her over. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he chuckled. "Fair." Then, he pulled something from his vest. It was a patch, an unofficial one, worn by operators after exceptional deployments. Not standard issue, not even regulation. But it meant something. He handed it to her. "For luck." Emily blinked. "You? Sure? Let's just say, I've seen enough to know who deserves it." They launched at dawn. Chopper blades roared over ocean mist. Emily sat between Knox and another SEAL, heart steady, eyes alert. She wasn't afraid. Not really. She belonged here. And when the time came, when the call went out to breach, and her signals needed to override the lock, she was ready. Her fingers moved across the tablet like lightning, bypassing 2 encryption levels, cutting power to a backup alarm system, and rerouting surveillance feeds. The SEALs moved in like ghosts. It was over in 7 minutes. Flawless. Emily stood in the darkened room, surrounded by retrieved tech, a heartbeat pounding in her ears. Not from fear, but from pride. They'd trusted her, and she hadn't let them down. Back at base, Mason met her at the landing pad. "You did it," he said. "No," she corrected, pulling something from her pocket. She handed him the patch. "You did?" Mason took it, eyes glinting. "No, that's yours now. You keep it." She tucked it into her vest, heart full. From an overlooked intern replacing paper targets, to a civilian embedded with America's most elite warriors, her story had changed. But more importantly, so had she. 2 weeks after the mission, Emily sat alone on a bench overlooking the training field, the same range where her journey had begun. The wind carried faint echoes of gunfire and shouted commands, but she was far from the chaos. She wasn't hiding. She was thinking. Ever since returning, the questions had been circling her like hawks. Officials wanted meetings. Programs were offered. Clearances fast-tracked. She'd gone from intern to essential asset in a matter of months. But, deep down, she wrestled with one thing. Who was she now? Civilian? Operative? Something in between? Reyes found her there just past sunset. Word is, they want you full-time. Special advisory position, embedded field work when needed. Emily nodded. "I know." He handed her a folder. "There's also this." She opened it. Inside was a contract direct commissioning program. A chance to enlist with immediate officer status based on her proven record. Rare, elite, almost unheard of. For civilians, I thought I'd be in logistics. Filing reports, she said quietly. Not clearing buildings with SEALs. You stepped into fire, Reyes said, and didn't burn. They sat in silence for a while. Then he added, "You don't have to prove anything anymore, Emily. The only question now is, what do you want?" That night, she walked the base alone. Everything looked different now. Not just because she had changed, but because people looked at her differently, too. The same techs who used to ignore her now stood when she entered. Officers she'd once been afraid to speak to now sought her out for input, but it wasn't ego that filled her. It was clarity. She passed the range and found Mason there, doing what he always did, quietly shooting, focused and calm. Should have known I'd find you here, she said. He didn't look over. You've got the stare now. He said, what stare? The one soldiers get when they've seen too much to ever go back to normal. She walked up beside him. Is that a compliment? It's a fact. She held out the contract. They want me in. Uniform, rank, everything. He finally looked at her. And what do you want? Emily hesitated. I want to matter. I want to be in rooms where decisions are made, not watching from behind glass. I want to help stop the next disaster before it starts. I want to protect people like my father did. Mason nodded. Then sign it. I'm scared it'll change me, she admitted. It should change you, he said. But if it changes, the right parts, that's not a loss. That's growth. The next morning, Emily stood before a small panel of senior officers. She wore civilian clothes, but her posture radiated calm authority. I understand this is an unusual path. Admiral began, but your evaluations, recommendations, and mission history speak for themselves. Do you accept this commission willingly, knowing what it means? Emily took a deep breath. I do. Not because I want a uniform, but because I want to serve. I've learned that intelligence without action is wasted. I'm ready to act. He nodded. Then welcome aboard, Lieutenant Carter. She saluted for the first time in her life, and with the full weight of understanding behind it. Weeks later, in full uniform, Emily stepped onto a flight bound for a forward operations command. In Europe, she'd been assigned as an embedded strategist, working closely with a rotating team of international allies. As she boarded, a young specialist approached her, nervous, eager. You're Lieutenant Carter, right? The one from that off book. Mission? I am, she said with a soft smile. I read your report, he said. You changed the way I think about this job. Good, she said, because it's not about who shoots fastest. It's about who thinks smartest. He nodded, eyes wide. She took her seat and looked out the window. The sky stretched wide ahead. That evening, across the ocean, Mason stood on the range again. A new group of interns was watching quietly as he demonstrated rifle form. One girl, about Emily's age when she started, raised her hand. Sir, have you ever worked with a civilian who actually made it into field strategy? Mason paused, smiled faintly. Once, he said. She showed up to replace paper targets. The group laughed. He looked out at the sky, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Replaced a lot more than that in the end.